Hello, and welcome to Rhetorical Analysis. We are going to be discussing rhetorical analysis in this video. We're going to be getting started here in just a moment once I fully collect myself. The recording started right a little bit before I was ready for it. I was just having ice cream. So, I'm a real people too. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This semester that I'm actually recording this video, it is week 9. And most semesters, rhetorical analysis does begin in week 9. So I'm not going to go ahead and say what semester it is because I want to be able to use this video over and over. But we're going to share screen and get the PowerPoint started for our discussion on rhetorical analysis. Once it begins here, we're going to start off the week's information with our Stephen King quote. Talent renders the whole idea of rehearsal meaningless. When you find something at which you are talented, you do it, whatever it is, until your fingers bleed or your eyes are ready to fall out of your head. Even when no one is listening or reading or watching, every outing is a bravura performance because you as the creator are happy, perhaps even ecstatic. I love this quote. I feel like it's excellent advice. Whatever it is that you are talented at, because we all good at something, do that thing. Do that thing even when no one is watching, because it makes you happy. I love this quote. I feel like that's a really nice thing from Stephen King. So we move forward. And so we had that piece of advice from Stephen King, and we have a few more that we're going to begin with today. This is another video that I'm sharing with you throughout the semester as potential fuel for you to use for your essay number 4 when we get to it. We're not quite there yet. We are going to begin rhetorical analysis today, which is essay 3. But along the way, I've been sprinkling in videos, talking with you about Stephen King. We're studying some of his short stories so that you will be equipped when we come to essay 4 for you to write your argument concerning Stephen King. So what I'm going to share with you right now is this guy, Evan Carmichael. It's his little face up here in the left corner of your PowerPoint screen right here. Evan Carmichael. And he has compiled some Stephen King advice for you. So this is Stephen King's top 10 rules or bits of advice for success. So we are going to take a few minutes and learn from Stephen King. Here we go.
Because I do it for free if I couldn't do it for money, but I love doing it for money.
A lot of times when people come to see me, they want to see if I'm really f***ed up.
How many times in your life have you eaten eggs? But there's always a new way to fix eggs. A writer's notebook is the best way in the world to immortalize bad ideas. For me, the fun of writing novels isn't in the finished product.
You get thousands of rejection slips before you break through. You kind of get used to that.
I usually finish a book and say, geez, I don't want to say goodbye to these people.
Is people will say, where do you get your ideas? I don't know where I get them. And if I did, man, would I tell you?
You go out broke. Everything's on loan anyway. I hear one of them saying, that's it, that girl ain't never gonna be right.
He's an American author of contemporary horror, science fiction, and fantasy. His books have sold over 350 million copies. Many of his books have been adapted into films, miniseries, TV shows, and comics. He's Stephen King, and here are his top 10 rules for success.
Well, the whole thing about the writer who sees the job as a burden and something that they struggle along, it makes me think there was an album by a rock artist named Todd Rundgren. It was called The Ever-Popular Tortured Artist Effect. And I sometimes think that writers draw this cloak of the tortured artist around them because A, you can get free drinks, and B, chicks love it. They love that tortured thing going on. But I've always thought that it was a terrific job, and I've always felt very, very fortunate, blessed really, to be able to do it. Because I do it for free if I couldn't do it for money, but I love doing it for money. That sounds kind of nasty, doesn't it? I love doing it for money.
A lot of times when people come to see me, they want to see if I'm really f***ed up. You know? Here's the thing, okay? A lot of times, if you're recording all this, you're going to have to bleep it because I have to be who I am. A lot of times, you know, when I do these interviews, they'll ask you questions and they'll say, what was your childhood like? And I no longer brook that question. I just tell the interviewer, what you want to know is what traumatized me so badly that I write this creepy shit. The answer is nothing. Nothing that I remember anyway, but of course, I wouldn't tell you anyway. Particularly in the horror genre, there are only 3 or 4 really good ideas, and we've all done them before, and it's really, okay, I mean, like, how many times in your life have you eaten eggs? But there's always a new way to fix eggs, and, you know, I look at it that way. You can always find a new way to do it. But, I think that there are as many ideas as there are sort of probing, talented minds to explore those ideas. People will say, do you keep a notebook? And the answer is, I think a writer's notebook is the best way in the world to immortalize bad ideas. My idea about a good idea is one that sticks around and sticks around and sticks around. It's like, to me, it's like if you were to put breadcrumbs in a strainer and shake it, which is what the passage of time is for me. It's like shaking a strainer. All this stuff that's not very big and not very important just kind of dissolves and falls out. But the good stuff stays. You know, the big pieces stay. I had the idea for Under the Dome when I was teaching high school back in 1973, and it was just too big for me, and I was too young for it. And I wrote about 25, 26 pages and put it away. There's a scene at the beginning of this book where this woodchuck gets cut in half when this dome comes down over this town. I had written that part when I was in my early 20s and just sort of recreated it from memory when I wrote the book. So the good stuff stays. The best description of writing a novel that I ever heard was actually in Thomas Williams's book, The Hair of Harold Rue, which is about a novelist trying to write a novel, and it just covers like 1 or 2 days in this process, and a lot of things happen to him. It's a fabulous book. But he says that writing a novel is like building a little campfire on an empty, dark plain, and one by one, these characters come out of the dark, and each one has a little pile of wood, and they put it on the fire, and if you're very lucky, before the fire goes out, it's this big bonfire, and all the characters stand around it and warm themselves. And that's the way it's always been for me. I have a good friend over in Vermont, John Irving, and John says that he always begins a novel by writing the last line. And to me, that's like eating your dessert before you eat the meal. And everybody works a different way, and God bless John, and he's done some wonderful work in his lifetime, and he'll probably do some more, but I could never write a book that way. The way that I think of it, you know, is that fire. I love that particular image, but I've also always thought of it in terms of there's a little thread, a little red thread that goes into a hole in the baseboard, and you just start to pull it out, and you see what's on the other end of it, and sooner or later you get there. For me, the fun of writing novels isn't in the finished product, which I don't care about that much. There's a guy who was looking at my shelf over there. All the books are on the shelf, and to me, those are like dead skin, the things that are done. But I love the process. A little while later, I wrote a book called The Shining, and it was my 3rd book, and I got contractual rights to write the first draft screenplay for that. And I did do that, and I found out later that Stanley Kubrick, who had got the rights through Warner Brothers, had already determined that he and a lady named Diane Johnson were going to do the screenplay for The Shining. So they basically, my screenplay went in and they said, no, this won't do, and then they went on to what they really wanted to do, which was fine. I wasn't angry or upset. You're not, after a while, you get thousands of rejection slips before you break through. You kind of get used to that, and it's just part of the game. But the thing is, you learn little by little.
Do you release books differently now than you used to? In that, like, do you have a different definition of what a successful book is, or on the eve of a book's release, do you pay a special kind of attention to how it will be received or how it's being reviewed?
I think that if you spend too much time worrying about what the audience is going to like, that they're not going to like anything that you do. I just look for ideas that I really enjoy, something that I really want to live with for a while, like the story about the people under the dome. Mm-hmm. And I get into it most of the time, and then I just have a ball. I never finished a book and felt like I'm glad that's done. I usually finish a book and say, geez, I don't want to say goodbye to these people. Mm-hmm. And if the people who read it feel the same way, then I'm really happy.
Look, you know, a lot of these interviews, the question that's the worst is people will say, where do you get your ideas? I don't know where I get them. You know, and if I did, man, would I tell you? I mean, Jesus, they've been good to me. All I know is that I sit down and I turn on the machine, and there's always that first 10 minutes that's like smelling a dead fish or walking into a monkey house. And then something will click a little tiny bit, and that leads to something else. And it's like choo, 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 until it's going faster and faster. And then you hit this kind of escape velocity. You're gone. The world, the normal, mundane, sort of stupid world where you got to do the breakfast dishes and you got to make the beds, you know, and you got to worry about getting the kid to the dentist. All that's gone. But there's a place where you have to walk away from it because it's so kind of addictive. That otherwise, you might just sit there and skip meals and just be lost in that world. And you wouldn't want to do that because that's sort of the way crazy people are in institutions. You know what I'm saying?
And here's a secret I learned 6 summers ago, lying in a ditch beside the road, covered in my own blood, and thinking that I was going to die. You go out broke. Everything's on loan anyway. You're not an owner. You're only a steward. So pass some of it on. You may not have much now, but you're going to have a lot. And when you do, remember the ones who don't have anything. A dime out of every dollar. Brian De Palma made a film out of Carrie, and I was a very young writer, and you know, I got no particular consideration, and certainly nobody sent me a screener or set up a screening or anything like that. I don't think screeners had been invented in 1975. That's how old I am. But anyway, they had sneak previews on Halloween night, I think 1975. And the idea was that they would piggyback Carrie on another film, and you would get 2 for the price of 1, and that way they would get an idea of what the potential was for the film. So they were gonna do a screening, one of these screenings in Boston. And I said to my wife, let's go in the car and go down and see what they made out of my book. And she said, okay, so we went down. Well, the film was in Roxbury, which at that time was a fairly black suburb, and it was playing with a black, not exploitation, but a black-oriented comedy called Norman, Is That You?, which starred Red Fox. And we were like 2 little grains of salt in a pepper shaker in that theater. And Norman, Is That You? Was really funny, and the audience was rocking and rolling and everything. And I leaned over to my wife and said, what's coming next is a film about a little skinny white girl with menstrual problems. And this audience is gonna hate it. And she said, God bless her, I mean, she fished Carrie out of the trash. I threw it away, and she picked it out. And so she said, well, why don't you wait and see? So they got they really got into it. And I was just amazed, but they were like totally on her side. And, you know, it was like the girls are pelting Carrie with sanitary napkins, and people in this theater are yelling, "Kill those bitches," you know, and stuff. Because in those days, they screamed at the screen. You know, they don't do it. People are so sophisticated now. It'd be like, "Don't go up those stairs!" Like Jamie Lee Curtis is going to hear you and say, "Okay, I won't go up those stairs," you know? Get a life. So this is the thing. The end of the movie comes, and De Palma did something that nobody had done up to that time. You think the movie's over. And Sue Snell goes to Carrie's grave, and there's this music playing. It's kind of sweet and everything. See, I mean, this is such a trauma that some of you are already going, "Oh, God, no." Because you know. And in the middle of this, while she's putting flowers on the grave, all through the movie, behind my wife and me, there were these two guys that were the size of NFL players, you know? They were these great big broad-shouldered strapping guys, and that arm comes out of the grave and they scream like a couple of little girls, and they're hugging each other, and I hear one of them saying, "That's it, that girl ain't never gonna be right." And I thought to myself, I may have a future in this business.
Thank you so much for watching. I made this video.
Very good. Very good. I love that video. So many good things there that we can take away from these lessons from Stephen King and different things that he has said throughout his career. Love what you do, right? Absolutely love what you do. Be yourself. Always be yourself. Explore new ideas. Don't be afraid to learn new things. Explore ideas. Understand that the good ideas will stay with you. You don't have to jump and act on things right away. You can let them simmer and stir inside of you and see what sticks around. And love the process. I love that about Stephen King, that for him, once a book is written, whatever, it's just a thing. It's the process that he loves. And learn from rejections. All of us have to learn to accept rejection. It is a good thing. You have to learn to take it and learn from it and then move forward. Let it always make you better. And look for ideas that you enjoy. Find your creative process. Every one of us is going to have a different creative process. You need to find what yours is. I mean, I give you the writing process in this class, yes. And it is an excellent pathway for success, especially in college. But you also have to find what works for you, right? Because we're all different. We're all different. And so pass something on. I like that he talks about that you can't take anything with you. Like none of us is going to leave with truckloads full of everything that we did through our entire life. You're going to leave with just you. So pass things on. Enrich the lives of others. And then tell great stories. I think that's fantastic. Whether it's written or spoken, tell great stories. I think that's super good. So good advice from Stephen King. Again, hint, hint, wink, wink, something you might want to refer back to when you were working on Essay 4. Excuse me. So let's talk about persuasion through rhetoric. Well, what is rhetoric? If we're going to talk about persuasion through rhetoric, we have to define what is rhetoric. Well, rhetoric is the art of argumentation, the use of language or other means to persuade an audience. The art of argumentation. Have you ever thought about argument as art? You're probably thinking, oh, fighting is not an art. That's not what I'm talking about. Of course, I don't know if you're talking karate or kung fu or something like that. That can be art. However, we're not talking about the fighting that you do when there's raised voices and angry words and perhaps violence. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about argument, debate, a back and forth exchange of ideas where learning takes place. The true definition of argument. It is an art. And it is art to keep it at the level of debate and not let it become a fight. So that is the definition. The art of argumentation, the use of language to persuade an audience. That is rhetoric. It is used in advertising, politics, writing, news media, social media, and any other situation where you are attempting to persuade an audience. Novels, movies, commercials, TV shows, documentaries, political speeches, newscasts, on and on and on the list goes. Salespeople, marketing groups, all of those are areas where rhetoric is used. And those who are more successful in rhetoric tend to make more cash. It's a fact. You're using it already, though you might not realize it. In every situation where you are attempting to persuade someone of something, you are using rhetoric. However, you might not be aware of your skill set. And that's what we want to talk about it today. So you can begin to take a look at yourself and consider some of the things that we're going to discuss, and then be thinking about, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to make myself a stronger critical thinker? This is the key. Your strategies adapt depending on the audience, the situation, and other factors. Like I said, you guys already know how to use this, probably subconsciously. You know how to get the cookie from your mom or to get the car from your dad. You know how to get your sister to leave you alone. You know how to get your boyfriend to buy you that thing. You know, we use rhetoric already. Most of us do it in a more or less unconscious way. Actively thinking about rhetoric is the bigger challenge. And so we're going to begin today with an example of rhetorical analysis. I'm so excited about this. We have several options. There is Stressed Out by 21 Pilots as an option. And also all of these are options. Which one to choose? I do particularly enjoy the analysis of Taylor Swift's Blank Space. However, I believe we're going to take a look today at Weezer's California Kids because I particularly enjoy that discussion. So, in order to get to it, we're going to have to do a stop share on screen, and we are going to need to go to Google and find YouTube, which I have open here. We're going to back up because I don't want to watch 4 or 5 seconds. And we're going to find, there it is, Weezer's California Kids. I'm going to play this for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this rhetorical analysis of Weezer's.
Okay, so as this is playing, my suggestion would be to take notes and to be listening to the key items that are going to be discussed. There are several literary devices that will be discussed. There are also the rhetorical devices. You will hear the words speaker, audience, and message be used. Understand that in this case, he's talking about the rhetorical triangle. And the rhetorical triangle is logos, pathos, and ethos. Well, logos is a message, ethos is the speaker, and the audience is pathos. And so in this video, he's going to use the terms speaker, audience, and message. So after it's over, I will talk a little bit about how those things correlate with our logos, pathos, and ethos that we're going to be digging more in depth with today in this lecture. So I'm going to go ahead and let this play. I hope that you enjoy this. Every time I watch it, I get something new out of it. I had a student earlier today say that she was absolutely blown away by the analysis that you're about to view. Some things were brought up that she never stopped to consider before. And that's not a surprise because most of us don't ever stop to consider what we're actually listening to, what's actually going in and affecting us subconsciously, that's shaping who we are, that we don't ever stop and dissect and ask ourselves, where's the logos? Where's the pathos? Where's the ethos? And look at those different parts and recognize whether or not someone is just trying to persuade you or if they're actually giving you good information. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and play this video. Let's go full screen. How about we go to full screen? All right, here goes.
California kids. Before we get started, a quick reminder to the teachers out there to check out teachargument.com for the corresponding lesson plans and to get tons of free and awesome English teacher stuff. If you are an English teacher and you haven't been there yet, it's definitely worth pausing this video and heading over to check it out. Also, if you dig the video, please subscribe to our channel. It's a big help. Okay, now let's jump right in. As the song begins, before the lyrics and the instruments and anything, we hear seagulls. This is already important. Why? Well, it's because of their connotation. So here's a mini lesson for you. We have two important terms to consider. The first is denotation. A denotation is a literal or primary meaning of a word or a thing. So hearing seagulls and thinking of the medium to large size bird that is usually white or gray, that inhabits areas near the sea, that is a denotation, right? It is very literal. Denotation's counterpart is known as connotation, and connotation is very important for literary purposes, for literary analysis, and also for rhetorical analysis. Connotation is the idea or feeling that is invoked by that word or that thing. So when you hear seagulls, what's the first thing that pops into your mind? What is the feeling that's evoked there? It might be the beach, right? It might be suntan lotion and the boardwalk and relaxation. It may vary slightly from person to person, but all of those feelings bundled together, bundled into the sound of seagulls, that is the connotation, right? And before the song even begins, that is what Weezer, the speaker here, has chosen to wash over us, their audience. Now, before we move forward, this seems like a good time to discuss the speaker, the audience, the message, and the purpose. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. So, as is always the case with popular songs, there are many ways to slice the rhetorical triangle. We may consider the singer, Rivers Cuomo, the speaker, and the specific hypothetical person that he has written the song for and is singing it to, his audience, and his message, something soon to be determined. Or we might consider the speaker the fictional character who is singing the words, which isn't necessarily Weezer's lead singer, Rivers Cuomo. It could be someone else, right? Someone fictional. The audience, it could be, again, a specific and unknown person that speaker is speaking to, and a message that we are yet to hear. Or the speaker might be Weezer, the band, the entity, the folks who produced this song and are putting the song out there. The audience, they're most likely listeners, they're fans, the folks who buy their records. And the message, well, we don't know it yet, but we will know it soon as we dissect things further. So for the sake of this analysis, we're going to go ahead and go with Weezer as our speaker and their fans as their target audience. And we'll hone in on who that audience is in a bit when we can get there based on details in the song. Why is this the setup we're going to use? Because in this case, it is the most likely fit. When we're analyzing other artists, like Taylor Swift, let's say, it's sometimes easier to draw connections between Taylor and an ex-boyfriend that she is talking about quite deliberately in the song. Here, Weezer is doing something a little bit different, right? They're singing to perhaps us, their fans, their listeners. And as for their message and their purpose, they are on their way. So the music begins, and it has this sing-songy, childlike nature to it. It's almost like it's being played on a xylophone, and that's very deliberate. It's very important. Just as deliberately crafted visuals like advertisements and billboards can pack a strong rhetorical punch, the same is true for audio. They could have just as easily played the same notes on, say, a violin or an electric guitar with a lot of distortion. But it's easy to see how each of these options would have significantly impacted the meaning of the song, The effect would be totally different. I would have altered the mood, the feelings already introduced by the seagulls, right, by the connotations we discussed, would be altered, would be affected in a very interesting way. And the sing-songy notes, as they're played, we get images, we get flashed images that we associate with the sounds of seagulls, beach, palm trees, waves crashing, seagulls, etc. So just before the song kicks off, we get a glimpse of the song title, California Kids. There are plenty of connotations that are associated with California that we've already seen flashed on the screen, right? The world-famous beaches, the laid-back lifestyle, the speaker has already laid the foundation for us, the listener. Now, let's talk about the word kids. It's not just California. The song title is not California. They could have done that, but instead they say California Kids. So we know this song is about a kind of person or kind of people, perhaps. And it is not the California adolescence, which is much more scientific and refers to a much different and specific kind of person than just kids, let's say. Think about the denotation of the word kids, right, as opposed to that of the word adolescent. The same is true for the word children. They could have said California children, but the song title would have had an entirely different connotation, even if the denotation would have been similar. It's a very deliberate choice. Okay, now let's actually listen to some of the lyrics and see if we can unpack a bit more of the argument itself.
When you wake up, cobwebs on your eyelids, stuck in rigor mortis. Whoa.
Two things for us to unpack. First, the lyrics, when you wake up, cobwebs on your eyelids, stuck in rigor mortis. So what does the speaker mean by when you wake up? He's probably not being literal here, right? It's not waking up the literal definition, but rather the symbolic definition. Waking up as in suddenly taking a moment to consider your life through clear eyes or fresh eyes. The kind of waking up you do when you are, let's say, sitting in a macroeconomics class in your sophomore year of college and you think to yourself, how did I end up here? Why am I here? Why am I majoring in business? It's much more likely that that is the brand of waking up that the singer is referring to here, rather than the literal counterpart. And waking up is followed by some powerful imagery. Cobwebs on your eyelids. Not something that happens when you sleep for 8 hours, right? You typically do not wake up, I hope, with cobwebs on your eyelids. Something that happens when you've been asleep or out of touch or living your life with metaphorically closed eyes for a very, very, very long time, maybe cobwebs on your eyelids. And the final bit, stuck in rigor mortis. Now, rigor mortis refers to the stiffening of the joints and the muscles of a body hours after death. That's what rigor mortis is, right? It sets in after a body has died, the way that the body stiffens. Do people wake up after rigor mortis? No, not literally, because they're dead. But in the first line of the song, here's the idea. You've been living your life without really living it. You've been asleep, metaphorically speaking, for quite some time. And suddenly, you've opened your eyes, right? You have cobwebs on your eyelids. That's how long it's been. But now that your eyes are open, that you're awake, you are perhaps realizing some of the mistakes that you've made moving along this journey of your life as you have. But how easy is it to spring up, to take action, and to correct your path? Well, it isn't easy at all. Most of the time, when you have this awful moment in your sophomore year in that macroeconomics class, let's say, when you're majoring in business, which you hate, most of the time people wake up and they feel that awful feeling, but they remain stuck, right? They are stuck in rigor mortis. They don't change course. They think, well, I'm already a sophomore, 2 more years to go. The semester's halfway through. I've already come this far. I may as well carry on in this way. And for obvious reasons, from an outside perspective, that doesn't make any sense. It's a bad idea. It's only your sophomore year. You have your whole life ahead of you. But that isn't so easy to say when you are stuck in this metaphorical rigor mortis, right? Bones, joints, and muscles stiff. It is a lovely metaphor. Thank you, Weezer. Now, before we carry on, let's take a quick moment to consider the person on the screen. The visual rhetoric here is very interesting, if nothing else. The guy is sitting alone at a table in what looks like a diner. Does he look like he just woke up, like he just came to his senses in his life's path? Not yet, but keep an eye out for it because we may see some of that in a bit. And notice the picture of Jesus behind him. what does Jesus have to do with anything? Why is that picture there? Is it possible that this is an allusion to resurrection or rebirth, which is one of the most powerful notions associated with Jesus, one of the most blatant metaphors that's already sort of cropping up in this song, right, of waking up with cobwebs on your eyes, and simultaneously the feeling of being stuck in rigor mortis? Okay, that's already so interesting. It's getting good.
Just get going till you hit the ocean and you turn Californian.
So first, the call to action. Just get going. This is different than just close your eyes or just go back to sleep or just keep on being a plastic water bottle on the river of life. Instead, the speaker says just get going. And this implies that you have a choice in the matter, that you're feeling like you're stuck in rigor mortis, but really you have a choice in whether or not you are going to be stuck, right? And the best course of action is simply to take action, to get up and go. And where should you go? According to the speaker, to the ocean. Why? Well, if we're following the first thread mentioned in the analysis, it's because the ocean shares a lovely connotative meaning with seagulls, palm trees, and so on. Saying get going until you hit the ocean is akin to the speaker arguing you have a choice, you know you aren't happy in your current state of affairs, and while you feel like you are stuck and you are stressed out and you are miserable, there is a way out, and it's relaxing. There's a sunny, happy place just waiting for you. You can go there if you want. Anyone can. It's the ocean. It belongs to all of us. Now, if we follow the second thread, the Jesus thread, we can read the ocean in a slightly different way. So in literature, bodies of water are often symbolic for rebirth, for things like baptism and new life. So the speaker's suggestion to get going until you hit the ocean can also be a call to action that prompts the audience to begin again, to start over. And what happens when you hit the ocean? When you are dunked in the holy water, that is, in this case, the Pacific Ocean, well, according to the speaker, you turn Californian. So what does that mean? Some questions for you to consider. What are the connotations of turning Californian? Is this a compelling idea? Do you even want to be Californian? Is this something that a lot of people might consider a positive thing? To what kind of an audience would this be most appealing? Is it an audience that's already Californian? Is it an audience that's stressed out? Is it an audience that's 15 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old? Who is it that Weezer is singing this song to? And then, of course, there is the implication that Californian is something that you can become. You don't have to be born Californian, right? You can turn Californian. And perhaps it's even possible to be born in California and not be Californian yet in this symbolic sense. It's easy to imagine someone's parents saying, you know, she was born in California, but man, she is a New Yorker. She has been a New Yorker her whole life. And if they said something like that, they might mean that she has not demonstrated the qualities of rest and relaxation and beach life often associated with California, but rather that stressed, on-the-go, busybody attitude associated with New York City. So in short, the suggestion is that being Californian can be a choice and isn't necessarily a static thing.
You don't have to have the answers. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
The lyrics reinforce this idea, suggesting to the audience, who is likely stressed and wishing he or she could baptize him or herself in the Pacific Ocean to start anew, stress-free, and Californian, that he or she does not, quote, have to have the answers. Don't you worry, don't you worry. So simultaneously, the music video itself begins to do some funny things. The man on screen seems to have some kind of a flashback to this guy, a man covered in cannoli cream, and to this waitress holding a tray of cannolis. So why the flashback? Is this a flash of memory to a previous mistake that he's made? Or is it a flashback to a previous life before he found the Pacific Ocean and allowed himself to trade stress for relaxation to turn Californian? Let's keep going and see if we can learn a little bit more about this situation.
Gonna be alright if you're on a sinking ship. The California kids will throw you a lifeline.
Okay, again, two streams to follow and analyze here. First, the lyrics, which state, it's gonna be alright if you're on a sinking ship, which again reinforces our previous analysis, that there is, in fact, a way out, that there is an option for salvation, to change the course of your life, to make things better, and that even though you may be on a sinking ship, you don't have to stay on that ship. That line is followed by the claim that the California kids will throw you a lifeline. Meaning what? meaning, most likely, that it is in your power to turn Californian, that California and the California kids, that is, everything associated with this Californian symbolism, will help to see you through it. Simultaneously, on screen, we see more flashes of memory, building closer ties between the original guy that was on screen and this long-haired fellow who is smashing cannolis into his face. We don't quite have an answer, maybe we don't need one yet according to the lyrics, but we don't yet have an answer as to whether this is a memory of perhaps some prior made poor life decisions or a previous life in general, but the connection is still clear. This may be one of the things that has him running to the ocean and striving to turn Californian. Maybe this is something he's running away from.
And if you're up all night, thinking about something you did, the California kids will show you the sunshine.
To reiterate, if you're up all night thinking about something you did, the California kids will show you the sunshine. In other words, that previous life, whatever all that nasty cannoli smashing might symbolize, whether it was last week, last year, literally a lifetime ago, if it's haunting you, if you are up all night thinking about it, the speaker tells his audience, to rest assured, it does not have to be that way forever. That feeling does not have to last forever. There is California. There is sunshine. There is a way out. And now it bears mentioning that all of those cannoli snapshots from that long-haired mustached man there are actually clips taken from another one of Weezer's most recent music videos, from the song Thank God for Girls. Those are perhaps bad decisions, and here we have an opportunity for starting fresh. Nice.
In your bare feet in mid-January.
So firstly, we have this powerful and, in my opinion, pretty awesome juxtaposition here. So what's a juxtaposition? It's when two things are placed closely next to each other for effect. Here, the speaker strengthens his argument by juxtaposing the audience's bare feet with mid-January. Now, where I'm from, mid-January is very cold. And when I think of mid-January, I immediately think of snow and icy roads and having to wear many layers of clothing and perhaps many layers of socks. That is a pretty widespread January feeling. Now, back to our understanding of words and connotations, right? But what happens here when the speaker juxtaposes January with bare feet, he tempts the audience with the promise of a relaxing, warm, and awesome alternative. Why be cold and miserable when you can be warm and happy with your toes in the sand, even in January? Why remain in that awful macroeconomics class when you have options? You have good options that will enhance your happiness and the quality of your life. Now, as that's happening, and as we get the visual reinforcement of a literal beach, we see this guy on the screen apparently haunted by a bag of chips. And we can probably figure out, before going any further, that he looks like he's haunted because, once again, he's having some kind of a flashback to some kind of a bad memory. The thing that is keeping him up all night, right? As mentioned in the lyrics, the thing that's sinking his ship, the thing that he needs California to save him from. Except this time, it's not cannoli, it's not a reference to their Thank God for Girls song and music video, it's something else.
Swimming in the mystery. Whoa.
Okay, so the same visual technique that was used earlier is happening here. We see flashes to this prior memory, and once again, we can confirm that these flashes are allusions to another Weezer song and music video. This one is called King of the World.
Second guessing almost everything. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Well, here it's a little clearer to see the visual representation of a regretful decision. We can interpret it any number of ways. Perhaps the snapshots of devouring cannoli from Weezer's Thank God for Girls was a reference to, let's say, gluttony and lust, whereas this might be a reference to greed of power and material things and potato chips, who knows. Either way, there is a regretful decision, that's the thread, right? There is a regretful past, and perhaps this feeling that it is inescapable, that those decisions will haunt you forever, because you've committed them and they're in your memory and you can't walk away. The audience is worried, and we know this for sure because the speaker is continuously telling the audience not to worry.
It's gonna be alright if you're on a sinking ship. The California kids will throw you a lifeline.
So what next? He seems to have escaped that memory, and as the song and music video progress, he gets closer and closer to the ocean. And yet, the closer he gets, the more of these obstacles he seems to encounter. And each obstacle, it turns out, are glimpses of other Weezer music videos, perhaps glimpses of their past, right? Presumptively symbolic for glimpses of a regretful or worrying past, a life that he wishes he could be reborn from or resurrected from. If you're wondering whether this female bodybuilder is from another Weezer music video, you already know the answer. The answer is yes. That song is LA Girls, and here it seems to be haunting him as well.
And if you're up all night, thinking about something you did.
The flashes to a much younger version of himself imply that this is perhaps a childhood memory, right? That there is some remnants of that kid still here, that California kid, perhaps, dancing on the beach, letting loose, letting the stress melt away, the closer he gets to that ocean. So let's revisit the rhetorical triangle, the triangle we discussed at the beginning of this analysis, and lay the argument out. The speaker is Weezer, the band that is performing the song, or Rivers Cuomo, the singer. We can consider them interchangeable for our purposes here. The audience, it's their fans, particularly a subsection that is perhaps getting older, old enough to feel bogged down in their life choices, to feel stressed or to feel trapped. As it turns out, this is a very popular feeling because we're all human beings, and in modern culture we all make choices. We choose a college, we choose a major, we pursue a career, we are tempted by material things, by salaries. We find ourselves inevitably questioning all of the forks in the road, and it's easy to see how this is a large subsection of their fan base. So it may resound with their fans who are 40 years old, who started listening to Weezer in 1994, and that 40-year-old who feels like he's trapped in his job. It may resound with the college student who is sitting in and hating his or her macroeconomics class. It may resound with a high school student who feels like he or she is trapped in and stressed by a relationship. It is a solid and sweeping target, which is very good for popular music. And the message? Well, the message is a positive one. The message is, it will be all right. That you aren't trapped. That you can indeed turn Californian if you really want to. And for some, simply knowing that hope exists is enough to make them feel good, feel much better. Simply listening to the song, hearing the argument, and being persuaded by our good friend Rivers Cuomo that there is the option to get going until you hit the ocean and you turn Californian is enough. And in that regard, it is a very hopeful message. So, what is the argument's purpose? Is it to make the listener feel good? Sure, probably, that's part of it. Is it to sell albums? Sure, that's definitely part of it too. Is it to expand on Weezer's popularity? Is it to further associate the Weezer brand with that image of hopefulness and turning Californian, like many of their other songs, like Island in the Sun and Beverly Hills? It's interesting how we can place this argument in many different contexts, and in each different context find a nuanced and different purpose. Okay, now for what is probably my favorite moment in the song.
All your old friends chilling back in Boston, you never forgot them. Whoa.
Alright, so what's my favorite moment? Is it Rivers Cuomo or his childlike doppelganger there losing consciousness on the sand? No, that's not it, but close. It's that line, all your old friends chilling back in Boston, you never forgot them. So why is that so good? Rhetorically? Because that is the counter-argument. So if you've listened to and you've internalized the speaker's argument as it's been embodied by the lyrics in this song, embodied by everything that we've discussed so far, the most likely counter-argument to the claim that you can simply pick up and go and start over and head to California and turn Californian, it's that it's not so easy, right? In my head, my thoughts, I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds really nice, Rivers, but what about my friends and my family? I can't just abandon them. I just can't pick up and go. That would make me a bad person. Turning Californian is out of the question. But that counterclaim, that counterargument is embedded in those lines, because when Rivers Cuomo says, all your old friends chilling back in Boston, you never forgot them, he is acknowledging that counterargument, the fears and troubles associated with shaking off rigor mortis, with picking up and changing course, with turning Californian. He acknowledges it, and then he derails it. He doesn't say, all your old friends chilling back in Boston, you never needed them anyway. They were part of the problem. That's not what he does. Instead, he assures us that they are still in the picture, that we can still be Californian, can still change course and have all of that good stuff while not having to let go of the good stuff that we've already got. Our friends in Boston, symbolically, they are still our friends in Boston. The only difference is we have changed our lives for the better. Okay, so as the video wraps up, there's one last and very powerful image, and it takes our analysis full circle. The guy that we've been following around throughout the course of this video, he's on the beach, he's close to achieving everything that we've been talking about since the get-go, that rebirth and turning Californian, resurrection, all that stuff. Remember that framed picture of Jesus that we saw at the very beginning? So what better way to drive all of that home than to literally raise a new version of himself from beneath the earth, from beneath the sands of the California beach? It's almost a literal resurrection, and it's an absolutely ridiculous thing to do in the song, but Weezer doesn't care. There's the symbolism. There it is. He is born from the California beach, and he takes the place of his prior version, now Californian. It's a nice way to drive those points home. Nice job, Weezer. The question that remains, that you're now left pondering, as the Californian dons the same glasses worn by his tormented counterpart, how much of him has been left behind? Is he truly Californian now? Is he seeing the world through the same eyes, the same lenses as before, because he put those same glasses back on? Are things truly better, or are they the same, or are they neutrally different? And as we're questioning all of this, two literal California kids run out to the new unearthed protagonist there, and they take him into their custody, and in the last moments of the video, we see through the lens of their phone's camera, right? We see through their eyes. It's so good. So, if you're a teacher, make sure you head over to teachargument.com.
Awesome. Very awesome. I'm going to take us out of that and put us back into our PowerPoint presentation. I want to talk just briefly for a moment about what we heard there. So it was a breakdown of California Kids by Weezer. And he starts off by talking about denotation and connotation and the difference between the two right at the very beginning with the seagulls at the beginning of the video. And he talks about how connotation is an idea or feeling invoked by a thing, and so the seagulls are there in the video to invoke this feeling of the beach for us, because we all know that that's where the seagulls live. And denotation, he says, is actually a very literal term, so we would use denotation to be very frank with what it is that we're trying to say, whereas a connotation would be more vague. It would be more about the feeling that it gives off. Then he goes on to talk about speaker, audience, and message, just like I said he would, and hopefully you were paying attention to that. So I wanted to just run through this quickly, where when he's talking about speaker, he's saying that the speaker in this instance is Weezer. Weezer wrote this song, Weezer put together this video. So the speaker is Weezer. The credibility for the message in the song comes from Weezer's own experience as a band. And they show us that by using clips, well, references to past videos inside of the current video, which is pretty wild. And then audience. Audience is fans. And so in the video, the gentleman talks about the fans are more than likely middle-aged. They're more than likely people who have been listening to Weezer for a very long time, like myself. I've been listening to Weezer since the 90s, and some of you might be like, oh my gosh, they've been around that long? Yes. I mean, my favorite is, if you want to destroy my sweater, pull this thread as I walk away, watch me unravel. That's a long time ago. I love that song. So we've got the whole audience conversation here with the focus on the listeners. And in order to reach your listeners, you're going to have to make some very pathos-laden decisions. Color, visuals, picture of Jesus on the wall, the cannolis, the beach itself, so many different visuals, word choices, things of this nature. all in an effort to touch the audience's emotions, because that's what we want to do when we are making an argument, is we want to touch our listener in an emotional place, and we use pathos to do that. The message here is the logos. That is what the speaker is trying to get across. Right? It is the crux of any speech, of any book, of any commercial, any message is its message. Not to be redundant. But in this case, we have Weezer talking to the fans about rebirth, that it is possible for you to not stay stuck, but to be reborn, to be renewed, to become something different. And so it's a song about hope, which is actually really cool. The motivation here is really cool. And I love some of the different things. I took 3 pages of notes. You guys, did you? You want to see proof? There's 1, 2, 3. And it might have bled onto the 4th. I think it did. I did. It bled onto the 4th. Ah, notes are a good thing. So in my notes, he talked about the music, the very specific, especially the sing-songy bit at the beginning, how that was specific, how that was intentional to give us this feeling of childhood, this feeling of nostalgia. It's important. The scenery. Had this been filmed in the mountains, it wouldn't have had the same feeling. So this is intentional. The lyrics, cobwebs on my eyelids, waking up, seeing life through new eyes, talks about being in rigor mortis. Now, we all know that that means that you're dead, but he's talking about being emotionally dead here. And so you're waking up from being emotionally and mentally dead. And I love that. I think that's really nice. I also love that when he's in this little restaurant situation, that there is a picture of Jesus right on the wall behind him. Hello, symbolism, right? Straight up symbolic of the entire message of the song: rebirth, renewal, resurrection. Very cool. It has a call to action. This is a get up and get going kind of message. It's up to you. So he's talking about more visual rhetoric and the bodies of water that are in the video. So the ocean is symbolic. He said water in literature is symbolic of rebirth. And so in this, we have the ocean. He talks quite a bit about the audience, the lyrics, juxtaposition, taking 2 unrelated things and placing them close together to create effect, the literary device, which is awesome. Let's see, regretful decisions. He talks all about that. And then we have the rhetorical triangle referenced again, with our pathos being our audience, our ethos being our speaker, and our logos being our message. And here's where he talks about the message being, it will be all right. You are not trapped. Hope exists. Get going. I love that. Then it talks about the purpose. He breaks that down. What might be the purpose? Is the purpose just to sell albums? Or is the purpose actually to speak to their fans and to give their fans a message of hope? And can it not be both, perhaps? And that would be mighty fine if it were both. Absolutely. He also has a counter argument here. He addresses that there is a counter argument trying to say, oh, yeah, well, all your old friends, right? But he's saying that the lyric is good here because he says, you never forgot them. Yeah, you didn't let them hold you back, but you didn't forget them. And so this song is full circle, talking about rebirth and renewal. And it is to be a message of hope to us. And perhaps you've never thought about it before. Maybe you're not familiar with this song. Maybe this is a brand new idea for you to actually dig in and see what the message is inside of the lyrics of a song. Every single song can be broken down like this. What was the motive of the person who wrote it? Why did they write it? What was going on in their life at the time that they wrote it? What was going on in the world at the time that they wrote it? What is their intent? Can you find it? It's exciting, I think, personally. I find that very exciting. So keep in mind that good writers and producers choose their words very carefully. They are making a concerted effort to have their writing and their production be persuasive. There is nothing wrong with trying to be persuasive or with using rhetoric to dress up or sell an argument. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, is it manipulative? Yes. Can it be used for bad intent? Yes. Can it also be used to change the world? Yes. Motivation's important. What is your motivation? Can you recognize it when it's happening to you? And can you straighten out your own skill set so that you can effectively use rhetoric to help you achieve the things that you need to accomplish? It's such a big topic. I absolutely love talking about rhetoric and rhetorical devices. But know this, thinking critically means not being seduced by rhetoric. It is being used on you all day, every day. We have got to come to a place where we can think critically, where we are not just being seduced by fancy words, pretty pictures, the red herrings of politicians. And we'll get into that term here in just a little bit. But we have to be able to make wise decisions and reasonable and well-founded judgments. This depends largely on our ability to see through rhetoric to evidence an argument. Can you actually find their evidence? Can you actually find their motivation? Why are they saying this to you? Why are they teaching this to you? What is the motive? Take off my jacket. It is getting warm in here. We need to be able to distinguish between rhetoric and argument. What is simply pathos-driven? What is simply just emotion-based? They're just trying to make a sale. They're just trying to get you on their side so they get more votes. And what's the real argument? Can you make that distinction? We need to be able to identify the more common forms of rhetoric and fallacies. So the common rhetorical devices, and you're going to hear me say these words many times, logos, pathos, and ethos. We're going to come back to those. But first, we're going to talk about logical fallacies. These are flaws in argument. They are flaws in logic, okay? Which means they are not logos. They are indeed pathos-laden. They are heavy pathos. They are the speaker, the arguer, the politician, the newscaster, the essay writer, using pathos to persuade, using pathos as their rhetorical device to persuade you through the use of fallacies, flogics, flaws in logic. That's logic of you. They're often very subtle, and learning to recognize these will strengthen your own argument and help you critique the arguments of others. Now, I came across this video and I was like, heck yes, I want to grow up and be just like her, even though I think she's younger than me. Right? Right? Yeah, it's not that I could so be old enough to be her mother or even grandmother. Shh, no. But I find this gal to be just fantastic and wonderful, and she's going to give you 31 logical fallacies in 8 minutes. It is important for you to study and know about logical fallacies. I have given you, and there's a slide to remind me to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you now, I have given you a handout on Blackboard that's 9 pages long that's full of logical fallacies, different things that you need to be aware of, that you need to read about, that you need to study, so you can start to pick them out in the arguments of others and the arguments on TV and the arguments in the news, so that you can recognize when people are using flaws in logic to persuade you. So we're going to let this video play, and you're going to encounter 31 logical fallacies in 8 minutes time. Here we go.
If you find yourself talking to someone who strawmans so hard that they're going to be picking chaff out of their hair for a week, it would be good to be able to point at what exactly it is that's making meaningful discussion impossible. I will also put a link to a website which has pages entitled "Your Logical Fallacy Is," which also has more detailed explanations. Let's go. Fallacy of composition. If it's true of the parts, then it's true of the whole. If there are 3 great players on my hockey team, then my hockey team must also be great, right? And the opposite, fallacy of division. If it's true of the whole, then it must be true of the parts. If my flat is about half the size of your flat, then it follows logically that my doors must be half the size of your doors. The gambler's fallacy is the idea that streaks of good luck or bad luck exist and are not just random noise. It's been read 6 times in a row, it's on a streak. Tu quoque. Or, who are you to talk? If your sister, who does no exercise, says, you should do 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week to be healthy, it is the tu quoque fallacy to say, I'll do it when you do. Who are you to lecture me about what exercise I should be doing? Her not doing exercise says nothing about whether or not you should do it. Straw man. Willfully misrepresenting an argument, often in a massively hyperbolic fashion. We should cut down on our use of fossil fuels. Oh, so you want to ban all cars and make 80-year-olds with suitcases run around on bicycles, do you? No. Ad hominem. You're evil, an evil witch, burn the witch and don't listen to the witch's opinions. They're the devil's words. Sometimes people are obviously biased or subjective, and so you should treat their arguments with care, but it's generally better form to attack the argument rather than the person. Somewhat related to this is the genetic fallacy, which is assuming that an argument is automatically wrong because of its source. Even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Fallacious appeal to authority. Sometimes it's appropriate to look at what experts think on a topic, but fallacious appeals to authority bring in someone who's an expert in an entirely unrelated field and expect you to treat them as an expert in this field. Being an expert in particle physics doesn't mean you'll automatically have sensible opinions on, say, pig husbandry, or vice versa. Red herring. A fallacy of distraction. Well, they might have stolen the puppy, Your Honor, but look how sad they are to be in court. Red herrings may seem plausible, but are ultimately irrelevant. In our example, a person being sad because they have been made to come to court is not relevant to whether or not they actually stole a puppy. That particular red herring is also an example of appeal to emotion. Appeals to emotion attempt to distract you by making you feel bad for the other person. So why should we hire you for this job? Because if you don't hire me, then I'll be out on the street, and I'll have to live in a cardboard box. You don't want to make me live in a cardboard box, do you? Appeal to popularity, or bandwagon. 5 million people can't be wrong. Appeal to tradition. People have been doing this for thousands of years, so it must be right. Appeal to nature. Ooh, don't trust medicine or science. It's full of chemicals which are bad for you. Here, take this belladonna. It's very natural. Appeal to ignorance. If you can't prove it false, it must be true, or vice versa. You can't prove that ghosts don't exist, therefore they must exist. Well, you can't prove that ghosts do exist, so therefore they clearly don't. Both of these are appeals to ignorance. Begging the question. Assuming to be true a premise that you are trying to prove. Zog the Great is infallible because in the big book of Zog the Great, it says that he's infallible, and we know that the text is infallible because it was written by Zog, who is infallible, because it says so in the book, which was written by someone who says it. Equivocation is using one word to mean multiple things and thus drawing incorrect conclusions, often on purpose. Any law can be repealed by the proper authority. The law of gravity is a law. Therefore, the law of gravity can be repealed, which conflates law in the legal sense and law in the scientific sense and makes you look like a bit of an idiot. False dichotomy, or black or white. Either you agree with everything I say or you're an evil baby eater. There is no middle ground. Sort of opposite to the black and white fallacy is the middle ground fallacy, which says if some people think 2 + 2 is 4 and some people think 2 + 2 is 5, then clearly the answer lies somewhere in the middle. No, decision point fallacy or the Sorites paradox. The decision point fallacy says because there is a continuum, it means we can't distinguish between things. But just because the boundaries between things are a bit blurry doesn't mean we can't tell one thing from another. I know that a horse is a mammal and a frog is an amphibian, even though frogs lay eggs and so do some mammals. Duck-billed platypi, what you gonna do? The slippery slope fallacy is the assertion that one step will inevitably lead to another, which will inevitably lead to another, which will inevitably lead to doom. If you get a credit card, then you will overspend and you will not be able to make your payments, and then you will definitely end up living on the street in a cardboard box. If you can stop at any of the steps, then it's a fallacy. Hasty generalizations or anecdotes. This is where you draw a general conclusion from a small or biased sample. Obvious examples include things like, well, my aunt smoked 10 cigarettes a day and she lived to 109, so cigarettes mustn't be bad for you. But it's also one of the reasons that self-selective surveys aren't particularly good for drawing general conclusions about a population. Faulty analogy. Comparing things which aren't actually similar in the way that would be relevant. Government is like business. Since businesses strive to make a profit, so should government. Burden of proof. When you insist that it's incumbent upon the person who disbelieves your claims to provide proof against them, rather than providing proof for them yourself. I'm a ghost. No, you're not. Why are you saying that? Prove it then. Prove me wrong. Prove I'm not a ghost. Since you're the one saying you're a ghost, surely it's incumbent upon you to back up this rather extraordinary claim, which you can't because you can't walk through walls and you're not transparent nor remotely scary. Woo! I'm a ghost. You're really not. Affirming the consequent is when you say something like, my dog barks when there's an intruder. My dog is not barking, therefore there's no intruder. Which, if your premises are in fact correct and there is no way that your dog would not bark when there's an intruder, is fine. However, my dog barks when there's an intruder, my dog is barking, therefore there must be an intruder, is not valid. I mean, dogs bark for all sorts of reasons, so unless your premise is, my dog only barks when there are intruders, this is not right. The opposite of this is denying the antecedent. If it barks, then it's a dog. It's barking, therefore it's a dog. Great, but if it's not barking, then it's not a dog, is not valid, because maybe it's just a dog that's, you know, tired. Moving the goalposts. You make a claim like, I can read minds. When someone tests this and you fail the test, you then say, well, I can only read minds which are on the right wavelength. Didn't mention that before. Moving the goalposts. False cause. Correlation is not causation, so even if global temperatures increase while pirate numbers decrease, that doesn't mean that pirates prevent global warming. See also the Texas sharpshooter, where you shoot the side of a barn and then draw your targets afterwards. First you figure out what your conclusion is, then you go looking for data to support it. Loaded question. Asking something with an assumption built in that means the answerer sounds bad no matter what they say. When did you stop beating your wife? No true Scotsman. No Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. If you're a Scottish man and you put sugar on your porridge, you are not a true Scotsman. Personal incredulity. Well, it's hard for me to believe that we're all made of billions of atoms, and so I'm just not going to. And last but by no means least, the fallacy. Just because something contains one or more fallacies doesn't mean that they have reached the wrong conclusion. Your yoga teacher says I should eat vegetables because vegetables are healthy, but that is a fallacious appeal to authority because yoga teachers are not dietitians. Therefore, I should eat cake. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was educational. Leave a comment if you have a favorite or least favorite
I love that video. I think she is
fallacy,
absolutely fantastic.
and if you want to give us
So here is our reminder that you have a 9-page master list of fallacies on Blackboard under handouts. It's a great tool, an excellent tool. Read through it, familiarize yourself with these so that you can be better prepared to recognize logical fallacies, to poke holes in logical fallacies, and to also maybe use them yourself. Because see, here's the thing, and you may think that this sounds absolutely wretched. That's okay if you do. The thing about it is this. I'm getting closer, like I'm whispering. I didn't mean to. That was body language. Subconscious. So the thing about it is this. Most people don't think for themselves. Now, I know that's no one who's watching this video. But most people don't think for themselves. Most people are very easily led. Most people will believe anything that you tell them. I heard it on the news. I saw it on the internet. It was on WebMD. You just give it a little bit of a backup that they don't look up because they're not going to look it up. Appeal to a celebrity. Say, oh, Johnny Depp said. And people will believe you. It's that simple. It really, truly is that simple, which is why sales, marketing, movies, books, politicians, lawyers, they all run the world because they know how to manipulate you. They know how to manipulate the masses. It's all and rhetoric. It's all done through rhetoric. How do you achieve persuasiveness? That's the nice way to say, how can you be manipulative? So, dun dun dun. We're going to take a look at a few popular logical fallacies. Now, a lot of these she discussed in the video. And I highly recommend that if you want to learn more about these, get on YouTube and watch some more of these videos. There are lots of these kind of videos where people have done a rundown of different types of logical fallacies, and most of them are pretty funny, especially the ones who will draw from politics as their examples. Those are always a hoot to look at. So I'm going to just run through a few that I think are vital for us to be thinking about, for us to recognize when they're being used on us, and also to recognize that, hey, I mean, if you know how to use a good one of those little bits of sarcasm, why not toss it in there? So here we go. The downplayer. Calling a scientist a so-called scientist suggests that he or she is something less than a true scientist. We are downplaying their credentials. So that is a downplayer. You ever think of circumstances where that happens? Oh, we downplay restaurants all the time where you might have had some bad service. So you tell everyone, I would never eat there. They're horrible. They call themselves a restaurant when really they're just a diner. We do this all the time. Downplay someone or something in an effort to persuade our audience. Anachronism. A thing belonging or appropriate to a period other than that in which it exists, especially a thing that is conspicuously old-fashioned, something that is out of time. Now, had we watched the stressed out video through Teach Argument, there's a lot of anachronism in that video, and it's a lot of fun for them to discuss. Here you've got grown men riding tricycles and drinking Capri Suns, you know. It's fun anachronism, but it creates this mood, it creates this feeling of nostalgia. And so you can then talk to your audience because you've given them a feeling. You can then talk to them about well, whatever the message is that you're trying to give to them at that time, if you've already set the tone. And you can do that with anachronism. There's just a few examples there. Ridicule and sarcasm. So this is when you're straight up just using sarcasm to try to persuade someone. You don't want them to like a particular idea or person, so you're going to use sarcasm to downplay in a sense that goes hand in hand. I like over here, Mark Twain is quoted as having said, suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress. But I repeat myself. I find that real funny. And over here on the left, John McCain made a great speech last night. Everyone awakened feeling refreshed. So if you're not aware of who John McCain was, he was a Republican senator and candidate for president against Barack Obama a few years back. John McCain was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He was missing in action for 5 years. When he came back, he had been tortured to such a degree that he had to have surgeries to correct his arms, and his arms were shortened for the rest of his life. I can't imagine what he must have endured and what it was like for his wife to not know if he was alive or dead. So when he came back, he got into politics because he wanted to make a difference. And he was just a very dry man, very uncharismatic, not exciting, very dry. He really truly believed that the people of America would vote for him because he was authentic. Like he truly loved America. And who did we vote for? Did we vote for John McCain or did we vote for Barack Obama? Did you have a president, John McCain? No, we didn't. Because he refused. He refused to play the rhetoric game, whereas Obama is Mr. Rhetoric. And I don't say that to give out any feeling on political matter whatsoever. I'm just discussing the men themselves. Barack Obama is a very charismatic individual. He knows how to use body language and the tone of his voice. He knows how to use words. He is a master at rhetoric. John McCain said, no, not doing it. And then you have statements like this. John McCain made a great speech last night. Everyone awake and feeling refreshed. So they're saying he was boring. And he was. He was boring. Hyperbole. I believe that probably every person, and that could be hyperbole in itself, every person is guilty of hyperbole, of exaggeration. We tend to exaggerate in different ways. This is a silly one here. The picture, my feet are killing me. Well, your feet are not literally plotting to kill you. They are not out there mixing cyanide and arsenic in a cocktail to try to down you or take you away. But we exaggerate. And you have to understand and keep in mind that so do the news people, so do politicians, so do actors and actresses, so do preachers, so do many, many people in sales across the board. There is exaggeration with an entire intent to persuade emotion. Euphemism. Making something sound better than it is. Like this old fella over here who just got fired. He tells his wife, good news, dear. I'm going to be spending more time with the family. That's a nice way to say. Then dysphemism is when we make something sound worse than it is. Okay, so we want someone to not call our grandma and let her know that we were out late with them. We want to tell them, oh, she's an old geezer. She'll bite your head off. When that's not actually the case, but we're going to make it sound much, much worse so we can persuade our listener not to call grandma. Stereotyping. The general beliefs that we use to categorize people, objects, and events while assuming those beliefs are accurate generalizations of the whole group. And I just have this to say about stereotyping. Stop. Stop. Oh, I could just launch into a tirade on this topic. But I sit back and I read the news and I search social media and I listen to people talk around me and I just hurt inside. That is not exaggeration. I literally hurt inside because of stereotyping. We as individuals are so comfortable lumping all people who believe this or all people who look like that into one or two categories. And this births hate. It births drama. It births so much unnecessary ugliness in this world. I got my face all feeling emotional just talking about that. So my nerve endings are like, which makes me itch. Same with you. Nerve endings itch when you are getting emotional. That one just bothers me. Not exaggerating, just being honest. And that's not proof surrogate to say that either. Proof surrogate is one of these nails on chalkboard ideas for me. This is when people will say, honestly, I went to the store the other day and my thing is I stop right there. As soon as the word honestly comes out of your mouth, I'm done. Because for me, it's like, oh, so you weren't honest before? Or you're just now being honest? That's what those statements say. Clearly, honestly, I mean it when I say, right? Really? You should not have to announce that you're telling the truth in an effort to be persuasive. For those of us who don't use proof surrogate, when you hear it, question the truth and the validity of the argument. And perhaps not the argument that's being presented in the moment, but the argument that was presented preceding to it. Because something's going on when a person has to say, honestly. Something's going on there. It is a logical fallacy. Innuendo. Innuendos are a lot of fun. I didn't say Bush invaded Iraq to help his buddies in the oil industry. I just said his buddies have done very well since the invasion. I didn't say it. I just hinted at it very strongly. Innuendo. I love innuendo. Loaded question. This is resting on an assumption that should have been established but wasn't. For instance, when did you stop cheating on your girlfriend? There's really not a good way to answer that question. Or the ever so popular, does this make me look fat? Don't answer that question. It's a trap. Weaseler. Oh, the Weaseler. Most commercials on TV have an element of Weaseler inside of them. This will cure all of your problems. All you have to do is take this little medicine. I love those commercials on TV where they are going over why you should take this pill to counteract that pill. And if you take this pill to counteract that pill, then the first pill will work better. Is that right? Is that right? How about no, Scotty? But keep in mind, the Weaseler is a great way that sales happens and marketing happens based off of this whole idea of all you need is this little bottle. All you need is these pair of shoes. You put these shoes on, you're going to be able to jump over buildings just like Superman. You put on this outfit and people are going to want to hire you, girl. That's all Weaseler. And I have right here, this is my absolute favorite episode of I Love Lucy. I was looking for I've got the 10 sign hanging over here in my room for Vitamita Vegemin. If you have not seen Vitamita Vegemin, oh, everything in me wants to play this for you right now. We have the link. Should we do it? We're going to click it. We should do it. I'm going to stop share and pull this up so that you guys can watch the Weaseler in action. Everybody should be aware of the Weaseler. All right. Let's find it. It's called Lucy Does a Television Commercial. I already own it, so how do I get to it? I know that you guys are like, wow, do we have to sit through this? Or maybe you're not. Look, I'm not signed in. Why am I not signed in? Let's get right back to it, shall we? Everything usually stays signed in my Google. Jeopardy theme music, anyone? Do 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 do. Oh no, they're sending a notification to my phone. Tap link to respond. Approve. All right, I did it. It should go through. Here we go. All right. All righty. All right, we're going to play.
You know your lines yet?
Well, I think so.
Well, let's run through it one.
All right.
Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of background because chances are pretty good, because in my on-ground classes, I know this. Chances are pretty good that some of you have never seen this. So this is Lucy. and played by Lucille Ball. And she is in the show, she plays the wife of Ricky, and they're actually married in real life, but in the TV show, they play a married couple. And he is a TV show host, and she's always wanting to be on TV, always, and trying to find ways to manipulate him or ways to sneak around him to get herself on TV. Well, this time she has succeeded. And there was another girl that was supposed to do the commercial, because commercials used to be live during TV shows. Like, they happened live. They would take a break from the variety show and they would move the camera over and do the commercial live right there on the set. And so that's what's going on here. Well, there was another girl scheduled to do it, and Lucy got rid of her. Not in a bad way. She didn't do anything nefarious to her, but she got rid of her, and she shows up at the television station to do the commercial. So here we go. All right, I'm going to stop it there. Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite things on the planet. And I love that I can use it here because it is a depiction of the Weaseler to help us understand. And now you're going to start noticing this when you're watching commercials on television, especially. We're going to tell you this is the only car you should ever drive. Right? This is the only vacation you should ever take. This is the only bank you should ever use. This is the only food product you should ever purchase. Weaseler, all of it. All right. Hasty generalization. This is a generalization based on insufficient or unrepresented evidence to say all sport car drivers are aggressive is a hasty generalization. It is very quickly lumping people into one category. One that my children and I always use is this one on the bottom. Old men wearing hats drive slowly. It seems to be fairly true that it is a hasty generalization. The either-or fallacy, the suggestion that there are only two alternatives when in fact there are more. And the case is that there generally are more options than what you are given. Most of the time, politicians, especially them, or in a court case, or in church, any of these places where you're being given a message where they want you to make a decision, they're going to present you an either-or scenario. Think through it. Absolutely think through it, because chances are very strong that there is another option as well. Here are some of those statements on these little newspapers. I thought this was cute. You're either with us or against us. That was Mussolini. That one's not funny. That's actually quite frightening. Either you're with us or you're with the terrorists. That was George Bush. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Thank you, Darth Vader. And either stand with us or with the child pornographers. I don't know who the person is that said that, but apparently that was a statement that was made. Now, this one I'm much more on board with. Either you love bacon or you're wrong. Either or is rarely the case. Circular reasoning or begging the question. An argument in which the writer, instead of applying evidence, simply restates the point in other language. Students should not be allowed to park in lots now reserved for faculty because those lots should be for faculty only. It's when you support your argument with the support for your argument. You support the argument with the support for the argument, with support from the argument, with support for the argument. There's no government like no government. Right? Circular reasoning. I'm sure none of you have ever encountered that. It's one of the reasons why I always prefer taking an essay test over a multiple choice test anytime, because I can write with circular reasoning. I can answer the question without ever actually answering the question. I don't know if I should be proud of that. Bandwagon appeal. a claim that an idea should be accepted because many people favor it or believe it to be true. Right? So there's the whole thing about the lemmings up in the right. Maybe you've heard of the lemmings where, they'll all run off a cliff together. But I found this little example down here at the bottom, and I thought putting Snoop with it would be real funny. Everyone knows that smoking marijuana is physically addictive and psychologically harmful. Right? There are lots of bandwagons out there. I think the most dangerous time that we see them in use is in the middle of a protest. And all it takes is one or two people to come in and to stir the crowd up even more, to use logical fallacies to stir the crowd so that they can get a riot underway. Very easy to do, and bandwagon appeal lets it happen. Argument to the person ad hominem. This is when we attack the person rather than the idea. An attack on the person proposing an argument rather than the argument itself. Lucy says to Linus down here, that can't be true because you're an idiot. Right? It's like how siblings talk to each other. We're very practiced at ad hominem when we have siblings. Here's one that I found on the internet, right? You can find anything on the internet. Definition for ad hominem, where you attack the speaker and not what he's saying. If someone has to resort to this technique, you'll often find they haven't thought through their position very well. And that's generally true. When we get to a point in the argument where we can't actually discuss the argument anymore, we tend to start attacking the person instead. And I'm sure that you can think of examples in your own life where this is true, examples in politics where this is true. Anytime we're in an election season, you see this happen. The candidates will start attacking each other instead of ideas, instead of policies, instead of voting records, instead of those things. They just start calling each other names. Very easy to stir the pot with some ad hominem. Red herring, an argument that focuses on an irrelevant issue in order to detract attention from the real issue. This happens in the news and on social media all the time. This also happens in government. You have to know that it does. They will have us all looking over here while they sneak in legislation. Were you aware that even though they were trying to do the vaccine mandate on everyone across the board, that the government officials in Congress did not have the same law or the same rule? There are many things that they say and do that they want for us, the people, to do that they don't apply to themselves. Are you aware that if there's a draft, you or your children will have to go to the draft, will have to sign up for the military, whereas anyone who is a senator or a congressman, their children are exempt? You're aware that they can vote themselves pay raises? Things they don't want us to know. So they're going to keep us looking other places while they're up there living a really cush life. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Most of what goes on up there is an absolute show. It's a total circus. And they're using red herrings all over the place. And we go, oh, yeah, at all the things that they are doing to distract us from what the real issues are. So, moving on. That one is another one I could get into. Force and fear. The ad baculum fallacy is committed whenever the proponent of an argument attempts to persuade the audience to accept the conclusion by predicting or causing unpleasant consequences if it is not accepted. You ought to vote for Senator Gulch because if you don't, I'll burn down your house. Force and fear. This is definitely a fallacy. Convincing someone to believe what you believe out of fear is wrong. Appeal to celebrity or authority. The ad verecundium fallacy consists of an appeal to irrelevant authority, that is, an authority who is not an authority in the field of question, or at least one we have no reason to believe to be such an authority. Down there in the words, it says, Oprah says that that she won't eat beef, therefore you shouldn't eat beef. Please. How about no? But don't we fall for this, though? It's interesting. The celebrities that are chosen are uniquely chosen to sell us unique products based off of their appeal. And this is all logical fallacy, because they know that we, the people, will see Johnny Depp spraying this cologne on himself and walking around a desert saying Savage. And we'll be like, oh, I have to buy it because he's so handsome. It's nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with how he looks, which if you see him without all the makeup and all of the CGI, not that cute. So it works, though. Appeal to celebrity, appeal to authority. It works, and we fall for it. Pity. This is an appeal to accept the truth of a conclusion out of pity for the arguer or some third party. Either the arguer or someone else is already an object of pity, or they will become one if the conclusion is not accepted. So down here, this is one. I hear this. I'm just saying it. I hear this sometimes. I had a message like this today from a student. This isn't the message I had today, but I had one like this today. If I don't get at least a B in the course, my GPA will drop below a 2.0. If that happens, I lose my scholarship and have to quit school, so I ought to get a B in this class. Is that right? Really? You should? How about work for it? Appeal to pity doesn't work on me. It just doesn't. That's me. I'm Judge Judy. My personality type is an ENFJ, the J standing for judgmental, which means skeptic. Most things people say, I am Judge Judy about. Now, I'll be nice to you, though. I'll be like, oh, that's so sad. But inside, I'm going, oy. Oh, down there in the bottom. How can you convict this man of murder? He's an orphan. So you get us to feel bad for you. Non-disproof. One sometimes encounters arguments that claim some claims should be accepted because they've never been disproven. The move from not disproved to proved is invalid. No one has ever shown that it is possible that the stars rule our lives, therefore astrology is true. Just because you can't prove it wrong doesn't mean it's true, but this fallacy would say that means it's true. Logical fallacies are everywhere, absolutely everywhere, and we need to be aware that they exist. I believe that human cloning is wrong. Of course you would say that. You're an idiot. Can't come back, can't argue the point, so just going to call names. Okay. That is a logical fallacy. So you guys arm yourselves with that information. So again, we are talking about rhetoric, the art to argument. Plato said this thousands of years ago. Rhetoric is the art of ruling the minds of men. I think that is beautiful. I think that's an amazing quote. Rhetoric is the art of ruling the minds of men. Absolutely it is. And people who are really good at rhetoric tend to do really well in life. But despite all of that, never dismiss a statement or argue it simply because it contains a fallacy. They have a legitimate place in discourse. A solid claim or a good argument may well contain powerful logical fallacies. But don't accept a statement or argument because of its force. Evaluate it on its merits. Be a critical thinker. See through it. Recognize it. Look for the fallacies. And here we go back to logos, pathos, and ethos. Those common rhetorical devices. We must look for them first. Ethos is the writer's credibility, logos is logical reasoning, and pathos is the audience's emotions. Here is a cool chart that I found to help us break down and understand logos, pathos, and ethos. Whenever you read an argument, you must ask yourself, is this persuasive? If so, why? And to whom? There are many ways to appeal to an audience. Among them are appealing to logos, ethos, and pathos. These appeals are identifiable in almost all arguments. So in the logos column, logic and reasoning. Where do we find these? How do we find them? Well, oftentimes logos is the argument itself, the reasoning the author uses, and logical evidence. Some examples are theories and scientific facts, indicated meanings or reasons, because statements, literal or historical analogies, definitions, factual data and statistics, quotations, citations from experts and authorities, informed opinions, examples, and personal anecdotes. Those are all types of logos appeals. Logic-based, fact-based, message-based. Next, we have the column for ethos, character and ethics. How an author builds credibility and trustworthiness. And so some ways to develop ethos, things to look for, things to evaluate. The author's profession or background, the author's publication, appearing sincere, fair-minded, knowledgeable, conceding to opposition where appropriate. It is always a good idea to concede to opposing viewpoints if it's going to assist you in your argument. Doesn't mean you have to say, oh, you're right. It's, oh, I see what you're saying. I might need to do a little more research. Morally and ethically likable, appropriate language for audience and subject. That's that whole know your audience and use the correct type of language that they will listen to. Appropriate vocabulary, correct grammar, professional format, all of those things develop ethos. Are you credible? Is the speaker credible? Can I believe them? So ethos is important. Then we have pathos. Oh, pathos. Words or passages an author uses to activate emotions. So types of pathos appeals. Emotionally loaded language, vivid descriptions, emotional examples, anecdotes, testimonies, or narratives about emotional experiences or events, figurative language, emotional tone, humor, sarcasm, disappointment, excitement, and I would add logical fallacies there. So these are our three columns. These are our three common rhetorical devices: logos, ethos, and pathos. These are the three things that we always need to stop and look for inside of an argument. What is the speaker's credibility? What is their ethos? Can you believe them, and why? What is their logic? What data are they using to back up their logic, their facts, their figures, their statistics? And what are they doing to persuade you emotionally? Because it's there, guaranteed, it's there. Be looking for those things. The chart continues. And if I'm not mistaken, this chart is under handouts. I believe it is also under week 9 for you. Just a great thing for you to take a look at if you're struggling to figure out or remember what I said logos was. This is a great chart to refer back to. I don't want to go through and read everything on here right now, but you guys can. You can pull this up for yourselves. And so you can familiarize yourself with the language there. The rhetorical triangle. This was referenced in our California Kids video. Speaker, audience, and method or message. So we've got speaker, which is ethos, audience, which is pathos, and logos, which is message. And so there it is broken down for you again and again. Pathos, emotion, logos, logic, ethos, ethics, credibility. Taking that a step further, ethos. Credibility is a concern. Does the author have the credentials to back up what is being said? It can also be affected by support used for the argument. Your resources can affect your credibility. And if you're using Wikipedia, and especially if your professor has told you not to use Wikipedia, your credibility is shot if you're using a source that your reader doesn't trust. It should attempt to show a lack of bias in how the argument is presented. Should. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Pathos. A reader is only the intended recipient of the message. A reader is interpreting the message regardless of what form it takes. Clearly identifying an audience makes a difference in what persuasive tactics and information are used in an argument. So again, you're going to use specific language choices. You're going to use different visualizations. You're going to use loaded language to move your audience emotionally. That's pathos. Nearly anything can be a message when we're talking about logos. Clothing, attitudes, expressions, etc. All these convey a message to the reader. The form the message takes can be made in different, can make a difference. Essays, letters, books, print ads, infomercials, etc., so forth. You can find logos all over the place. You just have to look for it. Ask yourself, what are the facts? Where is the data? And I don't know what I got into that caused me to have that sneeze. Sneezes. That was 2. And here's another chart that I found for ethos and pathos and logos. These are actually all over the internet, and you can locate charts for yourself. If you are having trouble, once I've gone through this, still understanding the difference between these 3 things, Google it. There's so much information online. So much. Find an article that reads in a way that you understand, or find a chart that lays it out in a way that you get it. But there is a distinct difference between ethos, pathos, and logos. So I've given you a couple of different charts here, so you can hopefully grab some understanding from one of those. I'm going to go ahead and move us on. I also found this, and this made me laugh. For those of you who are Star Trek fans, your argument is the Enterprise. We have Spock, who is logos, and Bones, who is ethos, and Kirk, who is pathos. And if you know the show, you know it's true, and you just had a moment. Oh, that makes me laugh. Comp 2, we talk about that a lot more in depth. Now, another video. You guys are like, holy cow, another video? Yes, another video. This is what I'm going to show you now. This is a video essay, a video rhetorical analysis essay. So we're not taking it that far. We're just writing an essay. This English class, they had to go out and create a full-on video essay. They had to, I guess, find a TV commercial and break it down into logos, pathos, and ethos and create a video essay to upload for their teacher and their classmates. I stumbled across this one. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. So we're going to watch it. All right. So, yeah, just bear with the voice. Pay attention to the words. All right, here we go.
So,
hey, how you doing?
doesn't matter.
Thanks.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Great. Okay, you know what electrolytes are?
Yeah.
Oh, could have fooled me. Looks like you don't. You know, you gotta sweat it to get it. You gotta burn some to earn some. Gotta take action for extraction. You know what I mean? You gotta dig it to. You don't get it?
It's a lot of rhymes. I was just trying to get the.
The rhymes are supposed to help you understand that I can't sell you the Gatorades that are full of electrolytes. Gatorades are for people who sweat.
I don't understand. I just want to buy these from you, man.
It's not my policy. It's
You heard what he said. So.
Hey, how you doing?
Doesn't matter.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Gatorade aimed its audience at kids to adults, ages ranging from 7 through 65. It encourages people to work out more and to be able to drink Gatorade afterwards instead of recreational use.
Great. Okay, you know what electrolytes are?
Yeah.
Oh, could have fooled me. Looks like you don't.
You first begin to see logos occurring in this ad. Gatorade is trying to teach its audience how powerful their drink is, and that it cannot be drunken casually due to the amount of electrolytes that are given. Once you're done working out, you can reward yourself by this pleasurable drink. For those who just drink Gatorade as a regular drink with no intentions of working out should feel embarrassed.
You know, you gotta sweat it to get it. You gotta burn some to earn some. Gotta take action for extraction.
Logos is still being used here. The knowledge base isn't clear to the average customer that buys Gatorade, which is the exact reason onto why Gatorade made such an ad. Everyone is familiar with Gatorade, but not everyone knows the actual purpose of the product. This ad is trying to show what it should actually be used for.
You know what I mean? You gotta dig it. You don't get it?
It's a lot of rhymes. I was just trying to get
The rhymes are supposed to help you understand that I can't sell you the Gatorades that are full of electrolytes. Gatorades are for people who sweat.
More logos is being showed by trying to educate the unworthy customer. The belief system in this ad is that sweating is a priority so that you can be privileged to drink Gatorade. But if you don't work out, then you should be ashamed for trying to drink Gatorade. As you can see now, pathos is starting to form because of the praise and worship this drink is getting from the cashier. Note his remark, Gatorade is for only people who sweat.
What?
I don't understand. I just want to buy these from you, man.
It's not my policy. It's
Well, in the background, you can say that a credible person comes in to judge the situation in the store. Now there's a mixture of both pathos and ethos. Pathos because of the funniness and excitement the customer is getting from Cam Newton. Also, how Cam Newton walked into the store as if he was someone very important, which he is in this ad. The ethos is shown in a way of how credible quarterback of the Carolina Panthers Cam Newton is. Cam obviously works hard in the gym. He even comes into the store very sweaty. Therefore, he's very credible. There isn't any misinformation in this ad because they cleared up all the confusion onto whether or not if it's okay to drink Gatorade like a regular drink. Gatorade is telling you not to drink it unless you sweat. This is why Cam approaches the customer and smacks his unworthy hands off the drink and says, "You heard what he said," referring to the cashier.
You heard what he said.
I like to think the customer in the ad is representing the audience. The audience's personal stake would be wanting to buy Gatorade with no questions asked. But of course, there is a Gatorade policy that the cashier says, "You don't sweat it, you don't get it." This ad is meant for people to work out even harder so they can be worthy enough to drink Gatorade. Gatorade is also stating two differences: people that drink Gatorade recreationally and people that work and sweat hard enough to drink Gatorade. Gatorade's intentions are to send a message to the average customer to drink Gatorade responsibly, which is a teaching standpoint And it brings us back to logos.
Oh, I love that. I would have so given that guy a straight up A. Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful video. Excellent breakdown of logos, pathos, and ethos inside of a television commercial. I'd like 2 thumbs up for real on that breakdown. Highly recommend you watch that again to get all the juice out of it. Juice. Ha 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 ha. So funny. So let's talk about writing our rhetorical analysis. Da da da. I know you're all so excited. You're like, wait, we just turned in our literary analysis. I know, right? So it's time to start your rhetorical analysis. And the homework this weekend is going to be your outline and just your outline. I have a friend. He wanted to say hello. He was climbing on my leg. Say hello. Say hello, Casper. Oh, baby. Mwah. All right, we'll just put him in my lap. So your rhetorical analysis essay. Let's talk about it. It is, oops. It is about logos, pathos, and ethos. We are doing this essay on a video adaptation of your Stephen King Night Shift story. So the story that you wrote your literary analysis on, you are now going to do a rhetorical analysis of the video. Now, some of you, unfortunately, didn't heed what I said at the beginning of the semester when I said, make sure when you pick your story that you can find a video of it. A movie, whether it's a crappy college student reproduction or a full-fledged Hollywood video or movie of the story, like Children of the Corn. You were told at the beginning of the semester to have that ready to go. Some of you didn't listen, and you are now going to be scrimping and scraping and stressing because you can't find one. I told you. But some of the rest of you, you're prepared, and that's awesome. So you're going to be doing a rhetorical analysis of the movie. All right, so how do we do this? Yeah, buddy, how do we do this? Well, first, some rhetorical techniques that we're going to take a look at in our piece. First thing you need to do is identify your speaker, your audience, and your message. So your ethos, your pathos, and your logos. Discover the effective uses of words and rhetoric and fallacies. Can you find any fallacies in your piece? Or in the video? In the movie? Did the producer exaggerate anything? Symbols, ideas, pictures of Jesus used to persuade or influence. Discover those. Look for them. What did the producer deliberately do to create effect? Did he play a particular type of music? Did he choose particular stereotypical looking characters? Did the characters change completely? Right? What kinds of things, what kinds of choices has the producer made to deliberately grab you, the audience? Determine what is the ethos, the logos, and the pathos inside of the video. Be thinking like this. Were you moved intellectually or logically? Were you moved emotionally? What moved you? Or what made you think? Do you believe it? Is it credible? Did it work? State your opinion. Try not to use I too much, if at all. And then I want you to think about who did it better, the video producer or the author himself. Do you like the video better? Do you like the short story better? So here's your actual assignment. It must be the story about which you wrote your literary analysis. So your video movie must be the same story. Did the producer, this is the question you're answering, did the producer capture Stephen King's aim? Now, you discovered Stephen King's aim in your literary analysis. So now you're asking, did the producer of the movie stay true to that message? You're going to compare and contrast the two pieces, the short story and the video, based on the use of logos, pathos, and ethos. The choices made by both the author and the producers. Argue this using the comparison and contrast point by point method, backed up with examples and descriptions, as we will have discussed in the class lecture. So we are comparing and contrasting the short story and the video. We know what we believe the literary analysis, what we believe Stephen King's message was. Did the producer capture it? That's what you're going to be arguing, and it's going to be based upon the use of logos, pathos, and ethos. Here is the example outline for you. Now, yours, logos, ethos, and pathos, don't have to be in the same order that I put them in, but I do want you to follow this outline. Okay, I'm not trying to make this a mysterious assignment. I want everybody writing about the same thing. I mean, we're all going to be different because you chose different stories and different videos, but we're going to have the same outline structure. So for your homework, I want you to have a flushed out outline. Don't just put point one, logos, define logos, movie, short story. I want you to actually define logos. Go ahead and put that on the outline. Right? And then give some examples in the movie of logos, some examples from the short story of logos. And then I want you to answer. See, I gave these 4 points. Did the producer capture the intent of the author, and which did you prefer? Who did a better job? And that's what you're going to do all the way down. And the thesis statement's real simple. The producer did or did not capture Stephen King's aim in his or her rendition of. This is evident through his or her use of logos, ethos, and pathos. And so in your thesis statement, you want to put those in order of how you're going to have them in your outline. All right. Make sure in your thesis statement that you are giving it details. And so you want to give the producer's name. You want to actually put in there what Stephen King's message was in the short story. Okay. And you want to state whether or not the producer captured the aim. So follow what I did there. But you will be putting it into mostly your own words. So this is the outline structure. This is a point by point comparison and contrast outline. So it's what I want you to go by. I do want you to capitalize logos, pathos, and ethos in your essays, because the way that we are using them, they are proper names. Logos, pathos, ethos. So we are going to capitalize those. I will be looking for that in your essays and counting off points if they are not capitalized. All right, so please do that. If you locate a logical fallacy in your video or in the short story, either one, state it in the essay and explain its use. You get 5 points extra credit. So it is possible on this essay to get 105%. It has happened one time at least. Usually students end up with like 102 if they locate a logical fallacy. I'm not trying to say that to scare you, but, and this is only for one. It's not like 5 points per that you find. We're just doing one. So if you find 2 or 3, I'm still only going to give you 5 points extra credit. So, but you have to talk about them and explain their use inside of your essay. Ta-da! That's an awesome thing. And it's so funny because I love extra credit. Like I don't give it very often, like if ever. But when I was a student, I was all about getting extra credit. And I loved it when my teachers would let us have it because I was going for it every time. I'm that student. So I really get excited when I come across the ones who have included the logical fallacies in their essays, because most everybody doesn't like really listen to lecture. And so they miss this part completely and they don't realize that I've said this. So it's fun for me to see who's listened and who hasn't, but I don't know if that's fun. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's just completely disheartening, but it's fine. It's really my mindset. Like I have how I choose to look at it, right? Right. So that is my rhetorical analysis main lecture. Next week, we are going to pick up and we are going to do a rhetorical analysis in the classroom together. We are going to read Strawberry Spring by Stephen King. It is from the Night Shift collection. We're going to read Strawberry Spring and we're going to do an analysis of it. And then we are going to watch a movie of Strawberry Spring that I found, and we're going to do an analysis of it. And then we're going to do a comparison and contrast together as a class. So, well, we're not so much as a class because this is online and we're not meeting in the same space. So, I'm going to do it for you, but I'm going to walk through Strawberry Spring and give everybody a giant big example. For your homework, I do want you to go ahead and get those outlines going, get those turned in. If after next week we say or do some things that you're like, oh, that's a lot more clear to me now, you will be able to make adjustments and some changes when you get your rough draft started. So, but this weekend, it's just outline. All right. So as always, feel free to reach out and text me if you have any questions at all. And have a great one. Thank you.